In this video, I'm going to tell you why I will probably never stop buying stuff from Games Workshop. Games Workshop has had an interesting couple of years. Now, to be fair, we've all had a pretty interesting couple of years, obviously. We're nearly coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the whole shoot match. Anyway, but Games Workshop has had not just the stuff that everybody else has had, the working from home, the not going to conventions, the supply chain issues and all of that stuff. They've also had, some other things. There have been people that have been angry about animations and Warhammer Plus and price changes and that kind of stuff, and also updates to games that they maybe didn't necessarily dig very much. Pachow, if you want to go down that road again. I frankly, like I said, the new version of Kill Team came out and it wasn't particularly my jam, and I mentioned it. And people got angry at me about it, but I just was telling the story the way that I saw it. But I've had some people recently ask me, they're like, so you're just going to stop with the Games Workshop altogether, right? Like that's what you're doing because you haven't really been talking about it too much and all that kind of stuff. That's not the case. If you've been watching me on Twitch, which you should totally do on Monday nights and Friday mornings, I've been doing nothing but Games Workshop. I have been working on models for, frankly, the only Games Workshop game that I'm playing right now, which is Warcry. I play Warcry. That's my game currently. I like other games made by other companies as well, but as far as within the Games Workshop, ecosphere, right now, that's pretty much the only game is Warcry for me. I've been playing with Sam. I'm playing with some other folks. I got to play a game with Vince during a convention we were both at back a couple months ago. That was a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I'm still playing, but, Games Workshop stuff, but just really only Warcry. Age of Sigmar, too big for me. Kill Team, I mentioned, we'll see. And then even, Warhammer 40,000, which I used to play a long time ago. It's not how I got into the hobby. How I actually got into the hobby was first edition Space Hulk in the early 90s. So I've been doing this for a while. My good friend Peter showed me this game that he had, and then that kind of set the hook, and so here we are today. Anyway, but no, the 40K, I don't know. I was actually watching a live stream on Twitch of some Combat Patrol recently between Kiko and Tycho from the Penny Arcade channel. You've probably heard of Penny Arcade, PAX, all that kind of stuff. They were playing on Twitch. They were playing some Combat Patrol, and Tycho's army his Combat Patrol of Necrons was identical to the one that I've got. And I thought to myself, but, we'll see. I don't know anybody locally around here who's interested in that, but maybe I can change some minds if I'm interested in going down that route. For me, Combat Patrol, you still got to have a bunch of books, and it's still a bunch of things, and it still can be a bunch of models, maybe 25 to 30. And I'm generally a little bit more interested in the skirmish stuff, which is why I talk about the skirmish stuff lately, like Planet 28 and Space Weirdos and Stargrave and all of the others. And then people say to me, after I'm painting nothing but Warcry models and playing mostly Warcry lately, people are like, so you don't do anything with Games Workshop anymore, huh? However, outside of all the games, which change quite frequently, every 3 years it seems like, and we'll probably be getting a new version of Warcry this upcoming summer 2022, unless COVID and the supply chain stuff pushes it back a bit. But do the math. It'll probably happen. And then we'll see how Warcry works out. But my point is that no matter how they change the games and tweak things and move things around, for the most part, I'm still probably always going to stick with Games Workshop on two big main areas. Well, let's say 2.5. The first one, of course, is their paints. And when I say their paints, I don't mean their paints. Their actual paints, the opaque paints that they make, are generally not to my liking. I have several other brands that I prefer for regular opaque paints. There's a couple of the skin tones that I still use just because I'm familiar with them and I like them when I'm looking for specific kind of like skin tone values and this and that. But for the most part, I kind of actually stay away from the majority of the actual Citadel paints. But contrast paints, yeah, these are something that I use since they've come out. I bet I use them on nearly every model that I paint. And then there's the washes, the shades, and well, I mean, since they've come out back way longer ago than even the contrasts, I definitely use washes, shades, etc. on literally every model that I paint. I can't think of a model that I have painted, like, because it would come up. If I'm sitting there painting and I get done and I'm like, I never used like a Null Noil or an Agrax Earthshade or a Seraphim Sepia. That's weird. That it just hasn't happened. So, like I said, there are plenty of other opaque paints out there that I love to use. And I do that predominantly, especially when I'm working on stuff on Twitch. But anything that I work on, whether I'm airbrushing, whether I'm brush painting, anything like that, I have my paints for the opaques that I really dig. And that's good. Most of them that are coming out of Games Workshop, like I said, specifically, are not to my liking. But the contrast, but the shades / washes, however you want to talk, that's definitely my jam. And I'm going to keep using those probably for a very long time. Now, that being said, our friends over at the Army Painter are making speed paints, and they're basically going to be much like the contrast paints. I'm going to be doing a video soon where I'm going to compare and contrast the contrast paints. See what I did there? So that'll be coming real soon. I've got 7 different colors, and I've got some models now primed up, and I'm ready to go. But for the most part, I can't, let's say that all of a sudden it turns out I prefer the Army Painter ones over the Games Workshop ones, and Lord knows they're going to be cheaper and all that kind of stuff. I still don't think I'll ever find anything that's going to replace specifically the Holy Trinity, Null Noil, Agrax Earthshade, and Seraphim Sepia in my workflow. So when we talk about the paints, we're talking about very specific. But as far as that's concerned with Games Workshop, probably unlikely that I'll ever stop buying that stuff. And then, of course, there's the models. They make, this is again my opinion, but sales will kind of show some of that as well. They make some of the best models in the entire industry. The techniques they've gone through, that they've perfected in many situations, are astounding. Now, this is not to say that sometimes I get a bum model from Games Workshop. Every once in a while, I'll buy a model. The Karkadrak, Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, or Crack-a-Lack-a Ding Dong, if you watch me angrily paint him on Twitch. That I couldn't get that figure to go together. I eventually had to go on eBay and find somebody else who'd built it and then, not painted it, of course. And I had to go through all that so that I could then have a copy that I could then paint because I couldn't get it to go together. And I've been doing this for a while. I'm not an expert, don't get me wrong. I'm not an expert builder, but this is not my first rodeo. And that Crack-a-Lack-a-Ding-Dong bucked me right off, and I was not able to finish the model, and it wouldn't go together, and the top wouldn't go on, and there was giant gaps, and I did something early on, and I couldn't fix it. So, eBay. And I don't think that it was completely my fault. I think that there are times, frankly, though I love the look of the Corvus Cabal models, they are surprisingly hard to build. They have plenty of other models that you just go and they're literally push fit and then you're done and you're ready to go. That's cool too. So there's a wide spectrum of models and build quality and things like that. Since we don't do fine cast anymore around these parts, we don't have to worry that much about that kind of stuff. You see very few resin models coming out of Games Workshop proper. It's predominantly all plastics. But even when they do come up with a bit of a resin model here and there, they're not fine cast brand name TM anymore, and so that means that they're okay. They're usually pretty good, but they're plastics in the industry, basically second to none. Incredibly sharp detail, very well designed, and even though I may not be playing a game, I still see models from time to time that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy that, and I know I'm going to use it in some sort of kit bash at some point. When I decide it's time to start kit bashing for any other game these days, I shop my collection first, and I go through and I go, well, I have some of these guys from Age of Sigmar. They would work with maybe some different heads, and these guys could do this, and it's a smart way to go. And because I do love the models, I'm going to probably keep buying them. Most recent model I bought from Games Workshop was literally like a little market for Necromunda. It's little awnings and little shops almost, basically, that you can use in Necromunda. And I looked at them like, there's nothing else much like that out there in the industry, and I know I can use those in some piece of cool terrain at some point, so I'm going to pick that up. That keeps happening to me, and it's probably going to continue to keep happening. Now, I said that there were 2.5 reasons why I'm sticking with at least why I'm going to be continuing to purchase things from Games Workshop, and the reason that half reason is because of all of this, because of the channel. I need to pay attention to Games Workshop to see what they're doing, because the mission of this channel is to get new people into the hobby. And new people, if they're interested in the hobby, it's probably because they found out about Games Workshop. Now, they obviously don't know the entire scope of what's going on and the history and this and that and all that kind of stuff. They may not realize that the prices have been going up almost surprisingly in certain times, in the past 5 to 10 years. We're in one of those sweeps right now where things are going up a good deal again. I'll tell you, I can't see myself paying $40 for a single 28 millimeter model. I mean, like a Monster or something bigger or whatever, okay, great. But like a normal, just like a Space Marine, but he's $40. No, I'm not going to do that. So, but I still need to know about it because people are going to ask me about it. People are going to come to me, in the chat or in the comments or whatever and be like, hey, so do all the models cost that much? And I'll be like, well, let me tell you the story. And so I'm going to be constantly paying attention to that stuff, even if it's stuff I'm not necessarily actively playing in, or maybe it's not, I'm paying attention to it, but I'm not an expert at it. There are being things that I'm like, well, I know that they added some new stuff to Blood Bowl recently, but I don't exactly know the names of all the players or any of that stuff, really. But I know that there's new stuff and that kind of thing. And that's going to continue to happen. I'm going to maybe, again, like I said, not talk about this stuff nearly as much maybe as I used to here on the channel. But I am definitely going to keep working on, talking about this stuff. I'm going to keep buying their contrasts and their washes. Pretty much anything they make that's transparent. I'm putting it over Zenithal, and that's all day long. That's how I'm painting stuff. And then the models. I mean, when I first saw the Cairn Wraith, probably a decade ago, that model, the way that it looked like it was floating above the ground, it blew me away. And so, I was just stunned. I really was. And they've taken that line and, of course, now expanded it into most of the Night Haunts. They all kind of do that. And it's a great looking thing. And I just can't say no to that stuff. Now, this all being said, before you call me a shill and all that kind of stuff, understand that as I've gotten to the age I am, I understand that there's no such thing as a corporation that's your friend. Corporations don't need your support, especially multi-billion-dollar corporations. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to support Games Workshop. I'm doing this, I'm buying models and I'm buying transparent paints and that kind of stuff because it's the stuff that I like the most. If another company came along and started making models that blew my socks off way more than Games Workshop and were evenly priced or cheaper, yeah, you can, definitely be sure that I would be buying fewer and fewer models from Games Workshop. As it is, the stuff that I see in the 3D printing realm right now, I've got a 3D printer. I've got a resin 3D printer. I don't have it set up. I'm trying to figure out the best ways to ventilate out that part of my basement. But when I do, I've already got a huge folder of STLs, and you may see me painting even fewer things from Games Workshop, and that's just kind of the way it goes. If these Army Painter paints do as well as I think they might, again, like I said, but don't just think that I'm saying all of this because I want to say, well, it's important to support, because Games Workshop's the hobby. They're a huge portion of the hobby, but there's a lot of other hobby as well. So definitely, maybe think a little bit about what your thoughts are, but why do I just completely eschew every other, product out there or game out there or whatever, if it's not Games Workshop, TM? Think about that a little bit because there's a lot of really interesting models out there. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. And like I said, I've dialed back, obviously, on the Games Workshop, but it'll probably be some time before I decide I'm not getting anything more from them, because really, null and oil, come on. 1, 2, 3, folks.